Let's talk about another coach from the Chiefs moving on, potential contracts that JuJu and Orlando could get in free agency, and then look at one of the top edge rushers available in free agency as he was recently named a player the Chiefs must sign this offseason. But first, how about those? First up, there's an important anniversary I want to bring up because it is one that is quite meaningful to all of Chiefs Kingdom, and that is 1 year ago, the Broncos traded the Seahawks for QB Russell Wilson, and I just wanted to personally take a moment and express my gratitude to the Broncos and their entire dumpster fire of an organization for such a remarkable trade. You guys did a really good job with that one. Thank you. In other more important news, a former Chiefs coach is moving on, and that is running back coach Greg Lewis, who was thought to be going to the Commanders to take a job there with Eric Bieniemy in some capacity. I mean, after all, he interviewed there a couple weeks ago and then went quiet, and my thought was he'd be a great addition to the Commanders, certainly, but would also be missed in Kansas City. He really was one of my favorite coaches to listen to at pressers, and I think was a fantastic coach for the Chiefs running backs, considering Lewis was a former NFL wide receiver, a former wide receivers coach, and then you put that experience together with the fact that the Chiefs love to use their running backs as pass catchers out of the backfield, and boom, recipe for success. So I was hoping there was still a chance he returned to Kansas City, but the rumor was Greg Lewis may have been looking elsewhere simply to climb the ladder a bit faster, and in a surprising move, Greg Lewis did not sign with the Commanders or the Chiefs. Instead, it was announced last night that he joined on with the Baltimore Ravens as their wide receivers coach. So there's a lot going on over there. Best of luck with Lamar Jackson, the contract situations. Regardless, wishing nothing but the best for Greg Lewis in his next chapter with the Ravens. And speaking of the best, I do humbly proclaim that the HBTC blend of Benchwarmer Brew, yes, my own coffee blend, is the best coffee on the roster of those who sit on the bench. A lovely medium roast with origins from Mexico and Ethiopia and flavor notes of chocolate and citrus. God bless America. I just had 2 cups today and am still feeling the caffeinated effects of that wonderful brew. And if you guys are looking for a way to support the channel and get a coffee buzz in exchange for your efforts, just go to coffee.hbtchiefs.com and snag yours today, and you can get discounts if you subscribe for a monthly delivery. All right, next up, Joel Corey is a former sports agent. In his bio on Twitter says he's an NFL contracts and salary cap expert, so I'm going to go ahead and take him by his Twitter word here and look at an article he released today that basically says, if I were these NFL players' agent, here's what I would want, but not necessarily get contract-wise for them. And the reason I want to look at this article is because he talks about both Orlando Brown Jr. and JuJu Smith-Schuster, 2 of the Chiefs' top free agents. So let's get into this, starting with Orlando, in which he says what we all know at first, that the Chiefs did not tag Orlando, letting him hit the free agency market and therefore avoiding a $20 million cap hit, which means 2 things. They are either very close on a deal with Orlando, less likely, or they are very far apart on a deal and are allowing Orlando to seek deals elsewhere to at least test the waters and see what he gets offered. And yes, it is true that last year the Chiefs offered Orlando a 6-year deal worth $139 million and averaging around $23 million per year, but it got up to that average per year because the back end of the contract had an inflated number to raise that average, and Orlando didn't feel like there was enough guarantees on the contract. So Brown played on the tag and played well enough that some team out there could pay him top of the market money and even reset the tackle market, believe it or not. Well, with all that being said, if this Joel Corey fellow was Orlando's agent, he'd be asking for a 4-year contract worth $94 million, $23.5 million per year, and $62.5 million in overall guarantees. And you know what? Orlando may very well get a contract like that, but I don't think it's going to be from the Chiefs. You see, Seth Keysor dropped an article on Orlando today on his Substack. Go subscribe to it. By the way, if you haven't, it's really great stuff. He puts out a lot of good content. And he said this about Orlando and the Chiefs letting him hit free agency, quote, Brown is a classic tough free agency decision, good enough to miss, but not good enough to give top of market money. And after seeing how Coach Reid adjusted for him down the stretch last year via chip help in various forms, among other things that Seth explains in this article, he ends the paragraph saying, I think the Chiefs likely agree. So Seth thinks the Chiefs agree that he's a good left tackle, but not good enough to reset the market, which is why the Chiefs opted to not tag Orlando and allow him to explore free agency, and the Chiefs themselves will more than likely explore other potential options as well. Okay, next up is JuJu Smith-Schuster. Joel Corey says Smith-Schuster had a bounce-back year with the Chiefs after an injury-plagued 2021 season. He went to KC on a one-year deal worth about $3.76 million and incentives up to $11.26 million. Then he caught 78 passes for 933 yards and 3 TDs in 16 games, and Joel basically said JuJu could be one of the beneficiaries of a weak free agent crop of wide receivers, and he notes the 3-year, $46.5 million contract that Allen Robinson got from the Rams in free agency last year after a par 2021 season where he only caught 36 catches for 410 yards with 1 touchdown in 12 games. He surmises that if Allen Robinson can get 3 years, $46.5 million, then so could JuJu Smith-Schuster, who nearly got 1,000 yards, and his team, his agent, are probably very well aware of that deal of Robinson, and that is why Joel said the contract he would want for JuJu if he was his agent would be a 3-year, $47.25 million deal with $31.5 million in overall guarantees, which would pay JuJu an average of $15.75 million per year. And I'm a bit torn here on this. On one hand, I think JuJu is definitely worth that much money, and that would literally be half the money per year that Tyreek Hill is getting. Yet last season, JuJu got well above 50% of the production of Tyreek's last year in KC. Yet on the other hand, I'm at a loss of how much the Chiefs value JuJu based on Mahomes' MVP performance last year with a basically brand new receiving core, proving it doesn't necessarily matter who's over there as long as Travis Kelce is still firing on all cylinders. And do not stone the messenger here. I'm not saying that Veach should not go and get weapons. I just wonder if they would instead explore a cheaper option, maybe a veteran wide receiver, and then take another swing at a wide receiver in the draft. So could that be DeAndre Hopkins? Maybe. But what if JuJu was willing to take a championship discount to stay in KC and chase some freaking rings after all? He said he loves being here, loves playing for Mahomes. So why not explore the option and keep JuJu Smith-Schuster around? I do think he was a valuable asset last year. After all, was the wide receiver one in terms of production only after Travis the GOAT Kelce, and he's probably worth $15 million a year. But what do you guys think? Is JuJu Smith-Schuster worth $15 million a year, or would you rather see the Chiefs pursue other options? Either way, we are about to find out soon because the new league year is right around the corner. And then ESPN and Football Outsiders' Aaron Schatz, I like that last name, Schatz, recently released an article titled "One Player Every Team Must Sign in 2023 NFL Free Agency." And it's worth noting that he does have JuJu Smith-Schuster needing to be signed by the Raiders as a quality wide receiver 2 lined up alongside or across from Devontae Adams. And part of me wonders, where on earth are the Raiders going to get all that money to pay both of them? But whatever. And then he has Orlando Brown Jr. being signed by the Titans. Now, for the Chiefs, he has the current number 1 ranking free agent edge rusher available per PFF, and that is Marcus Davenport of the New Orleans Saints. Aaron Schatz says with Frank Clark cut and Carlos Dunlap a free agent and not a lock to return, the Chiefs need a new edge rusher to play opposite George Karlaftis, so why not make a splash with the top young edge rusher in free agency, Davenport? He goes on saying, quote, "Who wouldn't want to play for the defending Super Bowl champions and make yet another run with Patrick Mahomes? The only problem is keeping the 26-year-old Davenport healthy, as he's never played more than 13 games in a season, but ignore his minuscule total of 0.5 sacks in 2022. That's right, he only had half a sack last season, which is half a sack less than the average man. SIS charting has Davenport with only slightly fewer hurries, 25 to 22, and the same number of hits, 22, than he had in 2 more games in 2021, which means those numbers strongly suggest that Davenport will rebound in the sack department in 2023. And if you pair this man with Joe Cullen, one of the best D-line coaches in the league, I think that could spell good things for Davenport and his production. Again, PFF listed this man as the #1 available free agent edge rusher, saying when healthy, he's a remarkably effective pass rusher and his talent alone could be worth the gamble in free agency, especially given the relative lack of edge rushers available. And I found this pretty interesting as well. They said since he entered the league in 2018, Davenport's 17.8% pass rush win rate and 13.9% pressure percentage are both top 20 marks among edge defenders. However, the issue is he's yet to log 600 snaps in a single season. The good news is most of his injuries aren't any major ligament tears, and therefore he still has some potential upside in production, especially if he's healthy all year. I mean, just the season prior in 2021, this man had 9 sacks, which is one more than Frank Clark ever had in the regular season in Kansas City. And then I checked how Davenport graded out last year compared to every edge rusher on the Chiefs, and well, even though he only logged a half a sack, he graded out better in pretty much every category over everyone: Karlaftis, Dunlap, Frank Clark, and Mike Dana. However, again, Davenport only logged 490 snaps last season, and you compare that to Frank Clark's 884, Karlaftis' 828, Dunlap's 674, and even Mike Dana had more total snaps at 556. So he did it in almost half the production of Frank Clark and George Karlaftis. So Davenport is certainly an interesting option here. He's 26, ready for a second deal, and maybe, just maybe, he'd consider a championship discount of some sort to come to KC and play next to Chris Jones with Joe Cullen and alongside, sort of, Patrick Lavon Mahomes II. And with that being said, what do you guys think of Davenport? Would he be worth the Chiefs considering? I mean, they need someone to replace Frank Clark as well as a veteran edge if Dunlap doesn't return, more than likely, and we'll also probably draft at least one defensive end as well. So a lot to consider here, but definitely let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And until next time, let's go. Let's freaking go. How about those